What up, y'all? My name is Kenneth Takanami, and I'm a record producer and artist based in New York City. Today, we are listening to the final Sum 41 record, Heaven X Hell. Heaven and Hell? Heaven or Hell? I should really figure out the name of the title before I review it. Heaven and Hell, the final Sum 41 record. I've loved this band for a very long time. They're very sort of integral to my musical identity, and I have a lot of fondness and nostalgia for them. So let's get into it. All right, let's kick it off with Waiting on a Twist of Fate. I remember already loving this one. Very heavy part for a pop punk side of the album. It almost sounds like they used a different vocal take on the album version. And that was Waiting on a Twist of Fate. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this one. It's just a fantastic hook. It's kind of like, it's interesting that this album is split between like pop punk and metal halves, and that could easily be either or. But yeah, really just one of the best hooks I've heard on a record like this in a long time. Out of all the singles that came out, this one was definitely my favorite, and I'd probably have to re-listen, but it even sounds like some vocal things were cleaned up before release. But I doubt this is the kind of record that I'm giving a lot of like thoughts and ideas or feedback about production or performance, because Derek Whibley is a very, very good producer. So probably just reacting to, how good the record is. All right, on to Landmines, which was I think the first single, and this one was also really good. Yeah, using like a pre-programmed drum beat is very like all killer no filler era. That was like a very Jerry Finn thing. Even like a refrain like that is not really on older Sum 41 records. It feels like a pastiche of just like a pop punk kind of trope. It's sort of like they wanted to do this throwback pop punk sound, but that record doesn't really sound like their pop punk records. Like, it doesn't really sound like All Killer No Filler or Half Hour of Power. It's like its own new thing, which I thought was interesting, because like it has these sort of pop punk tropes, like the chants, things they've used before, like the pre-programmed beats. But it sounds different. I mean, what's also interesting is I don't remember the last time I heard this band do like a love song or like a song about a girl. I mean, I'm sure he's written songs about his wife or whatever, but it's very different to write a song for your partner versus like a angsty young teenage love song, which is what that felt like. I think that there's a real opportunity or risk here of like just doing nostalgia bait, like the music equivalent of like Spider-Man actors coming out of portals and just doing like a remember this thing for a record like this. But from the singles I've heard, it doesn't really sound that way, so that's cool. I mean, I guess now we're getting into the stuff that hasn't been released yet, so let's get into I Can't Wait. Okay, very NoFXy. Ooh, okay. Yeah, it sounds like Underclass Hero. Like, I'm smiling. It's great. It's fun to hear this again. Derek Whibley, king of fucking hooks. I was one of those fans that really liked the metal stuff, I think, as I was getting older. But now that I am older and I just want to be younger, I like this pop punk shit. This is great. I really like that. It felt like a sort of Half Hour of Power style song, really fast, catchy, simple. But one thing that really did jump out to me is how much Derek Whibley's voice has changed. Because Derek Whibley has a pretty high voice, and you can almost hear on like those really early Sum 41 records, like Half Hour of Power and All Killer No Filler, he's like trying to make his voice sound deeper. But then around Underclass Hero, it's sort of like where his voice kind of netted out and has sort of not changed too much since. His voice sounds way better than it ever has, and you can really tell that he's taken proper like precaution and learned proper vocal technique. Like you can just hear that there's more like resonance and like air to his voice than ever was before. Like he doesn't sound like he's like singing from his throat or he's really like straining any of the notes. All of that to say is that his voice sounds a little different than it did back in the day. So it doesn't really sound like those half-hour power records. His voice sounds closer to how it sounded on like Underclass Hero. So it's cool to hear that style of writing from those older days, but with his voice sort of like matured and like sounding good. So on to the next one, Time Won't Wait. I mean, my immediate thing is like, in terms of track listing, I don't know why you would put an I Can't Wait and Time Won't Wait back to back. That feels like odd narrative storytelling for your record, but let's get into it. Time Won't Wait. All right, this immediately sounds like more like modern pop punk shit, like Machine Gun Kelly. I don't know how I feel. This is the same song as Shut Up by Simple Plan. All right, this feels like one of those hackneyed modern pop punk sounds. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Yeah, da da da. Yeah. All right, that one's a skip for me. Try to think of something nice. If we're talking about the last one being a very throwback pop punk sound, I guess this is like the new pop punk sound. It's like sort of like a slower BPM, very processed sounding, very quantized. I can definitely hear like this is the kind of song he would write for someone else, like a Jaden or a Machine Gun Kelly, but that hook is the same as the Simple Plan song, and as soon as I heard that, I was like, this is not it. I know that a lot of this genre reuses a lot of hooks, but like that's too close. That was definitely, I did not really, that one was definitely like, There's a difference between like intentionality and authenticity. And so I hear a song like that and it feels like very like aiming straight for the arrow of like commerciality. And I mean, I know that the song wasn't a single, but it feels like one of those things that it's like you could have just handed this to Machine Gun Kelly and I never would have guessed. I don't think this one is really for me, but I mean, it's cool. It's on the record. He did a different style. Let's go on to Future Primitive. Okay, this sounds a little more like Does This Look Infected? Yeah, cool. The same riff as No Brains. Yeah, that was cool. Felt like Does This Look Infected or Chuck sort of B-side. What's interesting too is I feel like this band is, I remember on the Chuck record, they tuned their guitars down a half step. And it sounds like to get that sort of like sound is what they're doing on this record, which is cool. It definitely, like I'm listening to this record and it feels like, the analogy I make for this is like, the original Star Wars was super inspired by Kurosawa, and now Star Wars is inspired by Star Wars. That's a little bit what like this record and like other bands from this era feels like, where they're pulling from like their past records. And I get that this is like sort of like a final hurrah. It's not like meant to be something brand new. It definitely feels a little bit like we're trying this and trying this from this era. And maybe it's not fair that Time Won't Wait was the one that tried something a little bit different and I wasn't as into it. This is not a record meant to push the envelope. It's celebrating 20 years of envelopes. On to Dopamine. All right, this sounds exactly like Landmines. Yeah, that was cool. Mr. Wibbly took a lot more influence from modern pop punk than I was expecting. If Derek Whibley wrote that song for Machine Gun Kelly. It'd be Machine Gun Kelly's best song ever written. But since it's a Sum 41 song, it sounds sort of flaccid. I think modern pop punk it's almost like this flattening of like everything that happened in that genre and trying to like condense it into like one package as much as possible. I don't know how to describe this, but you listen to pop punk and emo from that era and it's like Panic at the Disco sounds nothing like Jimmy World, which sounds nothing like Blink-182, which sounds nothing like Paramore. This impulse for like a lot of modern pop punk, which I gotta preface, I really do not listen to. I have a lot of nostalgia because this is the music I grew up on, but like I completely tapped out of the pop punk thing in like 2009. I have not kept up. I've listened to Sum 41's records and I've listened to some of Blink-182's records, but like I don't keep up with the genre. But from what I've heard, like the records that like I've sort of like heard on TikTok and stuff, they're all this like the most sort of like cliches of the genre, which is like the palm muted verses, halftime chorus, and then the double time final chorus. It's like, it's the formula. I never thought that this was a band that followed that formula necessarily, because it's like, you put this song next to like a Machine Gun Kelly song and it's going to sound like a Machine Gun Kelly song. But you put this song next to like Motivation or something and it doesn't sound like that at all. I think it's cool to hear him do this sort of like new pop style. I think this is the congruence, is that none of these were singles, and I never got the sense in any way that they're doing this for any commercial appeal. But at the same time, it's like this really like polished commercial sound, and I'm like curious about them doing that. This isn't a major label release. It's not aimed squarely at radio. I know that Landmines did well on Billboard, and I don't feel that way about that song. That feels like the inherent contradiction with this record so far, is that like nothing about it screams like it's going after radio appeal, but the songs feel very after radio appeal. Maybe there's like some weird meta element where Derek Whibley's like, yeah, I can write these songs like that super easily. Watch. On to Not Quite Myself. Yeah, continuing the thread of what I was saying before, I just find it fascinating that this is like a smaller record label release for a band that is on its way out, has no interest in commercial appeal, but he made like such a commercially appealing record. Did he just want to prove that like he could just do this without any effort? Like he could just be like, yeah, I can make like a hit pop punk record without even trying. It's just very interesting because I'm kind of like, but why? Like, you don't have to make a commercially successful record. So why did you make this? I've noticed this like impulse with pop punk groups recently where I'm not in the room. I can't assume what their intentions are. I can't go in there and be like, they're trying to make a hit record. The records are polished in such a way that they can sound good next to like a Dua Lipa record on radio or on streaming in like a playlist. They will compress things a certain way, they will tune vocals a certain way, and they will get it really like radio ready sounding. And Whibley produces all his own stuff, so he is very, very good at this. He is probably like, out of any of those bands that growing up, like one of the most like established, accomplished producers. So I listened to this and I'm like, he could really go to like an up and coming artist and write their biggest record ever, possibly. But he's just doing it here for his band that doesn't need it. For all that dude could have just written like an avant-garde record and people still would have bought it. I mean, maybe they wouldn't have bought it in like Argentina, but in the States they would have been like, oh, that's interesting. My thoughts so far, Derek is writing the greatest pop punk record for some band or artist that is undiscovered, yet it's a pretty okay Sum 41 record. On to Bad Mistake. It's so weird to hear like a 16th note tambourine. I don't remember the last time I heard a fucking tambourine on their records. Also, this sounds like something else. I can't put my finger on it. This sounds like an Offspring song, and I can't remember which one it is. Yeah, there's some Offspring song that's like from the cradle to the grave on a snake. But yeah, I was actually trying to put my finger on like what a lot of this record sounds like. It sounds like the Offspring. This is giving like Offspring vibes. Is that even an Offspring song? I'm gonna edit in what I was thinking of. Watch. Playing the hits. Pop punk trope 1, 2, 3. How many eras can we pull from? We're not even necessarily pulling from Sum 41 eras. It's like, here's like Offspring sounding stuff. Here's like Machine Gun Kelly sounding stuff. Here's Sum 41 sounding stuff. It's just, this album feels like an appetizer sampler of just like, here's a little bit of everything. What do you guys want? You know? On to Johnny Libertine. Okay, no effects vibes. Ooh, okay, this is funny. I like remember there's like a clip of this online somewhere. Okay, I really like that. Really fun. There's actually something I like realized while I was listening to this. I was like, oh, I miss Degenerate Whibley. Oh yeah, those old records, like he was just like a misfit idiot drinking and doing crazy shit. And I was like, that's what's missing from this record is like, oh, he's like a father and he's well adjusted and he's doing really well in life. Cause it was like those early records were like, we're young and stupid and don't have any success and we're having fun. And then even like the darker ones, like Does This Look Infected to Chuck, were like, this is the 2000s and the Iraq war is happening and we're angry and we hate everything. We don't know what's going on. And I'm realizing on this record is like, oh, the feeling of so much polish and pristine is just like, where's the mental illness? Where's the anger? Where's the disillusion? I don't feel it. I'm realizing as I listen to this album, I'm like, oh, it doesn't feel like there's much of a story here. It's just a lot of like, these are the pop punk tropes, the pop punk lyrics, and it feels a little uninspired. And maybe that's why I'm like, this would be some new pop punk artist's best album, and it's just sort of like a pretty good Sum 41 album. It's okay. That last song, Johnny Libertine, I was like, okay, that feels a little bit more like I'm a degenerate again. What's going on? You know? And that's what's crystallizing as I listen to this record is like, oh yeah, that's what is a lot of the pop punk formula these days. It's sort of like a flattening. It's like a generic, my heart is broken, I got ghosted. There's not a lot of angst. A lot of modern pop punk is missing the heart. It's missing the edge. It's missing the anger, you know? And I think that just kind of comes from like sort of squash everything into like an AI prompt and spit out what is the most radio appealing and the most commercially appealing. And I've always thought that they're kind of above that. So it's interesting to hear them do that. But Johnny Libertine, I was like, okay, this one's fun. All right, on to Radio Silence. I thought this record wouldn't have any slow songs, but it's cool. Sort of like Underclass Hero style. Yeah, I like that one. That was cool. That felt like probably like more like their modern records. It also makes me wonder how many songs on this record did they just not know where to put? Yeah, that was cool. Wow. Okay. Mr. Whibley, that's what I'm talking about. Get fucking weird. Try some crazy shit. A vocoder? Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. See, this is what I mean. I'm like, I think he's a really talented producer. I just feel like he's like in this box of like, I have to do this because this is what my fans want. That to me is like, all right, you can be experimental. You can get weird, brother. Look, we're welcoming it. My man, this is a new era. Get weird. Put a vocoder on something. Play the harmonica. Make a trap beat. We're here for it. Make jungle music. Mr. Whibley, I know you can. You probably want to. See, that was cool. I like that. I know that that's just an interlude before the next side of the record starts, because it's like that was the other single, Rise Up. Please. That was cool. I like that. And it's funny because like I'm imagining like their fans just being like, I don't like that. It's like, try some weird shit. I like when they get weird. I like when, because that to me signals like I still have more to say than do a best of, like greatest hits. Just want to do a quick plug for my music and my YouTube channel. I make punk-inspired electronic emo music, and you can check it out here, and here are some examples.
'Cause I can't stop drowning, I can't keep swimming, I miss you. I'm not here now, I let you down, I'm busy trying to figure out.
And a little sneak preview of my upcoming single out soon.
Can I have one good day, please? Can I go one day without volunteering my leave?
All right, on to side 2. Gamer anthem. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this song, but I will definitely pinpoint that when I first heard it, I was like, okay, it sounds like the last 8 years has been kind of this exact sound. Yeah, it's like a kind of cleaned up version of our Chuck record. And as soon as I heard this, I was like, okay, I can tell why this band is ending, because no shade, it's like a very well done song, but I'm sure Derek was like, it's running its course a little bit. This is just a formula that we follow of like fast, it's metal, it's got a guitar solo. Like as soon as I heard this, I was like, okay, I can kind of see why they're saying like it's time to wrap this up. All right, on to Stranger in These Times. Okay. All right, immediately this side is cooler. Yeah, this side is already immediately feeling just more inspired. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It just sounds like, all right, yeah, this seems like these are the songs he was more excited to put out or something. I don't know. The hooks feel stronger. The songwriting feels more inventive and creative. Like, yeah, the side is much, much stronger already, it feels like. I Don't Need Anyone. Up next. Okay, cool. First ever time I've heard like a trap beat on one of these band songs. Yeah, another cool one. Feels like a lot of their records of like the last year. You know, it's cool. I liked it. Yeah, another cool one. Feels like a lot of their records of like the last year. You know, it's cool. I liked it. On to Over the Edge. Better Off Dead. Okay, cool. Yeah, here we go. Also, I keep hearing like little like drum loops and stuff on this. Like that. It's interesting to hear. All right, yeah. That felt like there isn't that much to say about that one. It's just a cool, heavy, fast. I liked it. Felt not necessarily like a throwbacky sound, but kind of like the thing that they've been doing like the last few years, that perfect like blend of punk and metal and stuff. And I just like I like to hear him scream. I like to hear him really give a lot of edge. It just feels like I'm getting the emotion, I'm getting the grit, I'm getting the realness, which is what I wanted from that first half, you know? House of Liars. Interesting. Yeah, it sounds a bit like MCR. Yeah, that could have easily been on the first half too. Good hook. This record has been a lot of like the ones that really jump out to me. I'm like kind of that I found a little jarring are the ones I find the most memorable, and the ones I'm like, okay, I had a strong opinion about that one. Whereas I hear some of these, I'm like, oh yeah, that was good. I don't really feel particularly good or bad about them. They're not pushing the boundary or pushing the envelope too much. I just hear it and I'm like, yeah, that was good. So that's the kind of song I was like, yeah, that was good. Sounds like a classic. Like, I mean, the second half of the record sounds like kind of like the stuff they've been doing like the last 10 years. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just sort of like, yeah, everything that they did best kind of coming together in one. I can kind of see why they're disbanding. Like, this is a last hurrah of like, okay, one last go. And I was listening and I was like, oh wow, this is like the last time I'm going to be hearing a Sum 41 record for the first time. But I can't be the only one who thinks like this is not actually like the end. They'll come back. Maybe it's going to be like 20 years, but I'm sure they'll come back and be like, here's another record. This is what Derek Whibley is going to be known for in his career, and I'm sure he's not angry about that. They'll come back. I highly doubt this is the last time I react to a Sum 41 record. But my feeling so far as we're nearing the end, how the end begins, I was like, yeah, it feels like perfectly adequate. It's not going too far out there. It's not going too much in a bad direction. It's going right for the middle. It's like we're just doing something that is perfectly fine. And you'll like it. We're not getting too weird or too bad. It's like sort of like how a lot of Marvel movies are. It's just right in the middle. We're just giving you what you want. Do you like it? But definitely the first half of the album had me much more like, okay, I feel really strongly about it. Whereas this one is like, oh yeah, it's good. You know, all right, on to You Wanted War. All right. Immediately, this sounds exactly like that one Avenged Sevenfold song. Whatever. This band just does a lot of that open E, like, riff. Drop D, like just doing the string skipping thing. It feels like a lot of the records has been like a da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da thing. Yeah, that was cool. I realized that it has it sounds like another one of their songs that they put out recently. I'm trying to remember what it was. Like the formula of a lot, it's just like like that is the chord progression of like a lot of their newer stuff. It's a very like pop metal kind of thing. I'm listening to this whole record. I'm like, I wonder what music Derek Whibley actually like wants to make. The pop punk stuff felt like it's doing a bit of a throwback sound, and this one feels like, yeah, it's this other half is the best at what this band has done in the last 10 years. But the whole time I'm listening, I'm like, what does he really want to make? You know? The next song is a Rolling Stones cover, which I find really weird to put on this album, especially like it's their last album. Putting a cover on this that's like not even the style of either sides of the album, I find that very weird, and honestly it makes me think that they just wanted to pad out the length of this album so it's like an even 20-10 on both sides. I find that very odd. Like, why do that? But okay, Paint It Black. Also, I'm very curious before this plays because I know that Tom Thacker, who's in Sum 41, his other band Gob also covered this. And I know that back in the day, they used to cover their Gob arrangement of this song, this Rolling Stones song. So I'm very curious what arrangement they're going to do for it. So Paint It Black, Rolling Stones, cover. It's basically, it sounds like Gob's arrangement. It is exactly Gob's arrangement. Also very interesting to hear Derek sing in another style, like singing with vibrato. All right, they added some like tambourines and shakers and shit. That sounded really good, but like baffling. Why would you put that on this album? And this is, I think, crystallizing the whole like feeling I have about this record that there's no story, is that throwing in a cover on your last album one that doesn't really feel even stylistically like it makes sense on the side it's on. It's not really metal. It's not a metal song. You got three, it's basically like we're 3 songs until the end of Sum 41's career, and you just put a cover, and a Rolling Stones cover. If we're gonna put a cover, I would think like put something like NoFX or Metallica, because those are like the biggest bands that sort of influence this project, right? So way to throw it back to each. Like maybe like could have put like a cover of one of their favorites on each side. Like here's the NoFX song we used to cover all the time when we were younger as a tribute, and here on the final side is the Metallica song we used to cover all the time. Telling our story through someone else's music is really important, but by putting a Rolling Stones cover, not to mention a Gob, like a cover of Gob's cover of a Rolling Stone song. It just feels like we needed to pad out this song listing so it's an even 20. Very uninspired. I don't know why they would do this. It feels very weird. I'm like listening back to it, I'm like, the flow of the record is completely thrown off by this, and it makes me question the like intentions of the entire record. It's like, why is this in here? Would have been a great B-side, but like you're running out of time, and it's like, why throw in a cover that doesn't even really tell the story of this band or this album? I remember hearing now that like this album was finished before the band decided to break up, but still, it's like from the time that was decided, from the time that this came out, you can still have a song that sort of tells the story. I loved on the Blink-182 record that their first single was sort of talking about the band. At this point, I feel like I'm already missing that. I don't really know where the story is. I don't really know where Derek is in his life or as a songwriter, and I'm listening to this and I don't understand why they would put that in there. On to It's All Me. Sick. Sounds like Chuck. It sounds like the end of Angels with Dirty Faces. That one was another cool one too. That's from something else. I'm gonna try to remember what that is. Yeah, it's fake reality. Right up to even I can't believe it. The Star Wars enemy. So yeah, it sounds like hooch. All right. The last new Sum 41 song, the closer on Heaven and Hell. The last time, for now, I will be hearing a new Sum 41 song. The final song, How the End Begins. Here we go. And that's it. The final Sum 41 record, side B, done. My parting thoughts on the album whose title I still don't know. Heaven or Hell? Heaven and Hell? I think it's Heaven and Hell. Heaven X Hell. So I think my main feedback about this record was its story, like the narrative. Because I feel like every single record I can kind of pinpoint like what the story about the album was generally and where Derek was at as a songwriter. Because Half Hour of Power was just like a band in Ajax being stupid, and then All Killer No Filler just felt like a band in like LA being stupid. And then Does This Look Infected was a little heavier. You had the Iraq War happening. You could hear the like anger, disillusionment setting into like that band. And then Chuck was like fully like dark, angry, vitriolic, very much reflected like post 9/11 America. And then Underclass Hero, being a bit about the Bush years, like was definitely like a guy who's married and in love. And you could hear that that's like a happy record. And then Screaming Bloody Murder was like, okay, that is clearly someone in a total dramatic downturn of their life. You can smell the Jack Daniels on that record. And then 13 Voices is obviously about Derek's recovery, and then Order and Decline is clearly about the Trump years. And then this record, I'm like, I don't know what it's about. The first half feels like a bit of a throwback sound, love songs, and then the second half feels like pretty like right in the middle, angry metal songs, and I have no idea what any of them are about. So the whole album feels a little bit like uninspired. I think Derek Whibley's next record, whatever he does, is going to be really different and interesting and cool and different. Like, I think he has the potential to really branch out, and you could hear like little bits of this getting interesting. And I just felt like, okay, this is a band that knows that it's beginning to overstay its welcome, and the records are starting to sound very similar and sort of following a formula. And anytime on this album that it sort of broke the formula, you did something faster, you did something weirder, I really liked. But everything else just sort of like hit right in the middle. But that's the thing, I don't dislike the record. I will always like this band, and I always welcome them having new music. I don't really listen to this band hoping for something new to like really broaden my horizons. I listen to it because I've always liked them, and it's cool to see them still make music. That's my main takeaway from it, is what were they trying to say? I don't know. I want to listen to an album and be like, okay, that's what they were going through. That's what they were talking about. That's exactly what they wanted to say at that time. And I listened to Heaven and Hell, and I don't really know what they wanted to say. But, you know, it's catchy, it's melodic, it's energetic. It's the kind of record I'm sure I will listen to for fun every so often. But yeah, looking at the long trajectory of their career, I guess it's like a perfect sort of closer. I feel like they had stretched that sound out a little thin. Like, for example, my favorite song on this record is Prepari a Saleri. And I like that because it had a vocoder and he tried something different. Even like the Machine Gun Kelly sounding songs, I'm like, okay, that's cool. They haven't really done something like that. That's sort of like new 2020s LA pop punk. I think I like the second half because it didn't feel so polished, and that made it feel like there was more of a story because it was more raw and energetic. And then the first half is just very like clean, pristine, right in the middle lyrics that you don't really, it could be about anything. But that's something I'm realizing, and something that I think listeners need to take account for. You are not 12 anymore, and this band is not 20 anymore. And they're not going to be making those records, and you're not going to be listening to those same records, you know? Derek can't write In Too Deep again, nor should he. Here's my parting thoughts on this record. There's this air of like nostalgia and the sort of thinness of nostalgia that wanes throughout this record. They're doing the pop punk thing. It sounds a little uninspired, and they're also doing their sort of pop punk metal thing, and it maybe sounds a little bit uninspired too. And I respect a lot that Derek is ending the project, because I'm sure he senses this a little bit too. Like, look, the 2000s were great. We miss it. We miss our childhood. We miss the innocence of our youth. It's time to move on. It's time to do different things. And you notice this about a lot of content and entertainment these days, is that it leans heavily on nostalgia. Here's the thing you liked as a kid. You like Star Wars, right? Here's more Star Wars. Here's the 5th Indiana Jones movie. Here's the 5th Toy Story movie. Here's a new Mulan. Here's another Batman. I think that that is a dangerous sort of thing to grasp onto, because like you can never go back to the past. You can never relive your childhood. You cannot have those pop punk bands doing those records at that time, because you're not 15 anymore and they're not 20 anymore. I respect this record a lot for closing the book. You can kind of hear that maybe they're a little tapped out on this thing and they're ready to move on. I think that we should all be fond for our love for this band and other bands of this genre. But yeah, it is time to move on, and there's so much new, different music out there. I'm a little tapped out of the pop punk thing. Maybe this is a signal to the fans like, yeah, time for a new chapter. Don't hold on to the past anymore. Move on. Thank you for watching. My name's Kenneth Takanami. I make sort of like punk-inspired electronic music. You can check it out below, and I appreciate you watching. Heaven or Hell, what did you think?